TV show has ruined my life. America's Funny Videos. Ruined my life. Because, the whole story about the TV show is like all these people getting, they're hurt, and, in some way, and guess how people are responding? They're laughing at it. And it's ruined my life. And so, let me tell you how, because we took our family down to Indianapolis Children's Museum, and this was about 5 years ago, and we went down there, we were going through it, and that's a great museum, I like it, and but there's, on this one level, there's this through the ages, and there's this one little boy that passed away, and it's like his bedroom, and it's got Legos, it's got Transformers, G.I. Joe. This is kind of the era that I grew up in, and so Luke saw that, and he thought playtime, and he got into a full speed, and he's running, and he's looked to get into that room, and next thing you know, he hits the plexiglass, and he's laying on the ground, and I didn't go, "Oh, are you okay?" Do you know what I did? I didn't laugh. It's America's Funny Videos right there, and we didn't record it, but anyways. He kind of came to, and he saw his imprint, his oil imprint on his forehead that was on the plexiglass, and there's 3 others that were right beside it, and didn't see that. He's I didn't even know that was there. And but it kind of revealed something to me that maybe something about you that it's we lack compassion, and Jesus teaches us a lot about compassion, that he wants his people to be compassionate people. And I want you to turn in your Bibles to John chapter 5. I want you to see the story as we begin our series about celebrating compassion. And I want you to look at it with me. We're going to read through it, and then I'm going to just kind of unpack it for you, some details. This is what it says in chapter 5, verse 1. It's up on your screen, but also you can open up your Bibles, John chapter 5, look at verse 1 all the way to 15. So, it says that sometime later Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for how long? 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" Now this seems like an obvious question. His answer is, "Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I was trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man who was cured. Isn't that amazing? And he picked up his mat and he walked. And the day on which this took place was a Sabbath. And that's when you want to go, dun, dun, dun. Okay? So I'm going to try that again. And I want you to do, okay, ready? The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. Hey, you're really good. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, the law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat and walk." So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later Jesus found him at the temple and said, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." The man, figuring out that it was Jesus, went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. Now, a couple of pieces of information about this, just to consider, is kind of getting the context of this. Jesus is coming into Jerusalem. Jerusalem is known for being built into the side of hard limestone hill. And they're known for that. He's coming into this city and into Jerusalem, and it's on the Sabbath, and it was in preparation for the feast. Now, the Jewish people have these numbers of feasts that they would participate in, and it was really the story of God's redemption for people. And it walks you through the different aspects of it. And they really don't know what feast it was. In chapter 7, it recognizes the Feast of Tabernacles, and the feast before that is the Feast of Trumpets. So their imagining is probably the Feast of Trumpets, this declaration moment. And it really does declare something pretty amazing about Jesus in this moment. So he's coming into Jerusalem, and he finds himself in Jerusalem at the Sheep Gate. Now, in the old city of Jerusalem, being conquered and destroyed and then being rebuilt and all this stuff, there was a part of the wall, part of the city, was where the sheep would be brought in for the sacrificial system. It was known as the Sheep Gate. And so he finds himself there. Now, the word for Bethesda in Aramaic is the joining of two pools. That's what that word means. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So just explain a little bit what are these pools that are going on. Now, in the city, with it being built on this hard limestone, they would have these caverns underneath that would fill with water. And so when it would get full, it would gush out, and it was fresh water that they would be able to drink, and they would be able to use for cooking and all that kind of stuff. So there were these strategic areas that they know that when it would fill up, it would gush. They built these pools that were actually, they would fill into it and collect the water, because it didn't happen all the time. And it was interesting, the two pools that were collected, one is called the House of Mercy, and the other one is called the House of Grace. And so when it says the pool of Bethesda, it is the joining of the two pools. It is where the House of Grace and the House of Mercy meet. That's what that means. So they're coming in, and Jesus sees this crowd. So he comes into Jerusalem, and he goes to this place, and actually, literally, they know where this place is today. There's a church called the Church of St. Anne. I don't know, I think, John, where are you at? John, you went to Israel? Did you go to the Church of St. Anne? Okay, so in the Church of St. Anne, they did some excavation, and they found the pool of Bethesda. And so you could actually see this pool. The pool that was the joining of the two pools, the House of Mercy and the House of Grace, where they would meet. Now, in that church, it's interesting. I thought this was interesting. That church was built in 1131 AD. It is 886 years old. Could you imagine the heating bills of that building? Anyways, that's just floors me. Anyway, so really it is there. So if you go on a tour, you will find the pool of Bethesda, because something happened at the pool of Bethesda in John chapter 5, which is absolutely unbelievable. See, in this pool, this is where what is it? Jesus said there's a group of people that are there. Who are there? What does it say? Look at this. In verse, where's it at? Where they're all coming together. And it says, right here, verse 3. It says, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed, they're all coming to this place. There's a score of people that are there that are ill. Now, why are they at the pool of Bethesda? Because legend has it that when the waters of the pool of Bethesda stirred, that if you were the first one into the pool, that you might get healed. So they're all sitting around this pool, and they're going, listen, we're the House of Mercy and the House of Grace. They meet in this place. They're looking for hope. They have hope. They're hoping that it might be their day. And see, this is where we find Jesus. And he's on the Via Dolorosa. I mean, this is on the way to the cross. Jesus finds people, finds you at the pool of Bethesda. Because what he wants to do is he wants to give you hope. It's where mercy and grace meet. People that have lost hope. People that are ill, that need healing and help. And so Jesus sits down. Can you imagine? I mean, here's this guy. He's a paralyzed guy. And he's been there for how long? How long has he been paralyzed? Anybody? 38 years. So this guy's been paralyzed for a long time. We don't know how long he's been coming to this pool, waiting for the moment. But it says Jesus learned of his condition. Look at verse 6. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time. So Jesus actually, you can almost imagine, here this guy is on the ground, and Jesus gets down on the ground and sits next to him. When was the last time you got on the ground and folded your legs and actually talked to somebody? You know, it's maybe been a long time, right? So you're thinking, man, if I get down, I'm not getting back up. You know, it's hard stuff, you know. But he sits down and he listens to this guy's story. We don't know how old this guy is, but we just know that he's been in this condition for how long? For 38 years. And we know that he's been at this pool looking for healing, and he's yet to receive it. We also find out a little bit of information towards the end of the story. Look at verse 14. It says, Jesus finds him in the temple after he heals him and says, see, you are well again. Now, what commentators look at that is to say, listen, this guy understood what it meant to walk. So he wasn't paralyzed from birth. So this guy was able to walk. And he's saying, look, you're walking again. He knows what it's like to use those legs. You know what? When you woke up this morning, most of us in this room, most people, not everybody, but most of us were able to wake up, throw our legs over the edge of the bed and get up and walk. Some people can't. And I can only imagine what that must be like. To be able to not do that. And this guy's like, every day, every year, for 38 years, this is what he can do. And Jesus said, I know. I was listening to your story. And I remember when it happened because you told me. You used to be able to walk, but now you couldn't walk. The reason why, he says, stop sinning or something worse may befall you. The idea is sometimes the result of our own, it is our own fault. Sometimes the suffering in our lives is because of choices that we've made. And the idea of what he's saying here is, listen, you've made a choice. I remember, it was one of those moments where you're sitting there and you're by the pool of Bethesda and you're saying, man, if I could go back and hit the redo button, I may not have done that, said that, gone there. I may not have done that again. Because now I know where it's led me. And Jesus is saying, you know, there's a better way. There's a better way. So you're walking again. So stay the course. Listen to the Lord. Follow Him. And here's this guy's story. And then Jesus asked him a question. What's the question that He asked him at the pool? Do you want to get well? Verse 6. And here this guy gives you a little inkling as to where he's at in his life. See, because the reality is there's some things that we've done that we're suffering from our own cause. There are other stories where people are suffering and it wasn't their fault. It was like, you know what? God, I didn't do this. I didn't deserve this. Why is this happening to me? So you got this guy over here that's saying, listen, I know what I did. I wish I could redo that. But here's this situation where this guy's there and he's saying, I didn't do this. Remember Jesus talks about, it's not because of sin, but the guy was born blind. So did he sin or his parents sin? He said, no, it's for the glory of God. And so here you've got these two stories, and these two stories are converging at the pool of Bethesda, where they want to see the mercy and the grace come together and find hope. And he says, do you want to get well? Well, that's an obvious answer. What would you say? Yeah, absolutely. But how does the guy answer? He says, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water stirs. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. See, this guy had lost hope. Now, mind you, he kept coming back to the pool. Or somebody kept taking him. But this guy had been praying for 38 years. I can only imagine. He's been praying every day for 38 years. Could today be the day that God heals me? Could today be the day that we can get back to where it was before? Some are there, they still have hope. Others are still praying, but have lost hope. Maybe you are in that place. Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe you're like, we're struggling, and we've been praying. And maybe you're still praying, but you've also lost hope. Maybe it's with children. Maybe you're like, man, my child, maybe they're rejecting God, or maybe they're just rebelling, or maybe they're going off like the prodigal son story. And I keep praying, and I keep praying, and it just feels like God's not answering. Maybe you've lost hope. See, Jesus goes to the pool of Bethesda, where the house of mercy and the house of grace meet. And He wants to give this man the gift of hope. And see, it all happens on a Sunday or on a Sabbath day, which is, for them, I mean, the rule is that you could do no work, right? I mean, this is an important day. So what he's saying is, on the Sabbath, you can't do this. And what happened is he got in trouble. The guys noticed it. I mean, the Sabbath police were there. And they're like, what are you doing? What are you carrying your mat for? You know that the law says you can't do that. He says, but there was a guy that said, I was supposed to. And I did. And look, I could walk again. See, what Jesus is doing is so much more, where he's saying he's not only giving them hope, he's letting him know who he can rest in. See, the Sabbath is all about rest, right? So it's all about taking a break from your labor and you rest. You follow the Lord's example and you rest. Jesus comes in and he's working on the Sabbath, because Jesus isn't saying the Sabbath isn't made, or you're not made for the man, Sabbath, but the man is made for the, you know what I'm saying. So the reality is, you want to rest in the day, but you're resting in the wrong thing. Because have you noticed, even though you take one day off, have you noticed on Monday morning, we take one day off, let's just say, we take one day off, we get to the Monday morning, and we're like, ugh. You would think, oh, we should be ready to go. Have you ever gone on vacation, you're more tired when you get back? I mean, the reality is, you can rest, but the rest isn't going to give you the rest. The rest that you're looking for is the rest in someone. And his name is Jesus. That's why Jesus says, all you who are weary and heavy laden, come to the Sabbath. He says, come to me. And you will find what? Rest for your souls. See, what Jesus is trying to tell them is, listen, at the pool of Bethesda, where you have lost all hope, it's where the house of mercy and the house of grace meet. So that you can find hope again. Because you're not resting in man or the things of this world. You are resting in the one who can change and turn the water into wine, who can raise the dead and give sight to the blind. And give a guy that can't walk the ability to walk again. And Jesus does all of this to show his disciples, this is the kind of people that I want you to be, where you are houses of mercy and houses of grace. Where you go to people that are ill, whether it be a fault of their own or not. Whether they still have hope or they've lost all hope. But you come to them and you give them hope. And you point them to the one who can give them rest. And so I've asked Randy to come, and Randy is involved. Come on up here, Randy. And Randy Packer's a good friend. He's been a part of our church for a while now. And, those that provide health care are just incredibly important to me. And I'm sure at moments of your life you've needed them too. And I've asked Randy, I was like, man, how do we show compassion to those who are ill? And I've asked Randy. Randy, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I have a Master of Divinity degree from Grace Seminary, and I was able to work for 12 years at Kosciuszko Community Hospital, Warsaw, as chaplain and social service person. Then came to LaGrange, and for the past 16 years been the psychosocial spiritual care coordinator at LaGrange Hospital. That title doesn't fit on your business card. And as a hobby through all that time, I got to be deputy coroner in Kosciuszko County and then in LaGrange County. I think that I was cloned to do what I do because my mother was a nurse, my father was a funeral director, I was a paramedic, and so I was able to follow through with those things. It's always been amazing to me that God has given me the opportunity to do what I was able to do in be a spiritual, show God's love in a secular environment. June of last year, I lost my sight, my vision, and I found out I had diabetes, and health-wise has been kind of downhill since that time. I had to sit because my balance isn't good enough. You don't want to watch me fall over when I'm up here. And I really miss what I was able to do. But over the 30 plus years of working in healthcare, God's taught me some lessons. There's some verses that he just laid on my heart early on that I've tried to follow through with. One is talking in Matthew 10 about giving a cup of cold water to those who are thirsty. Matthew 11, Rustin alluded to, that come to me all who are tired and burdened down with the junk of life, and I will give you rest. I found that in today's culture, God uses us to be the hands and the arms and the feet of Jesus to do that. Matthew 25. Again, Rustin mentioned that when we do to the least of these, we're showing that love and compassion for Christ. I would remind myself of those verses over and over again as I was being hauled out of bed, going into the hospital in the middle of the night, thinking, what am I doing? And then remember what God has called me to do. Another lesson is the fact that God doesn't always work in our time. He has his own time schedule. And that may be at 3 in the morning, it may be at 4 o'clock when I've had a long day and I'm going to go home. It may be something that he resolves in an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, 38 years, a lifetime. God works in his time, not in our time. The most powerful part of the story of the prodigal son to me is the fact that the father, first of all, didn't go out and look for his son. He didn't enable him in what he was doing. He allowed God to work out his process in his time. And he was waiting patiently. We don't know how long that took, but waited patiently for the son to come home and then showed God's love. Another thing is that God may choose to use me, but God doesn't need me. He may use me to be one piece of the puzzle, and we never know where along the timeline that is, but God may choose to use us, but he can work out his perfect plan without us. And so we don't want to get big heads because of what we do. We don't want to get big heads because God may choose to use us here, because God is perfectly capable of us. Maybe most importantly is the fact that presence is much more important than words. It's much more important to be there and to show God's love just by your presence than it is to try to come up with a solution and give eloquent words. The most positive feedback I had over the years was times when I thought I really didn't do anything. You stand beside the bed with the family, an arm on the shoulder, and just be there and show God's love. Or sit in the emergency room and listen. Allow people to tell their stories. Not sitting there listening, think, what am I going to say next, or how am I going to solve this, but just let them talk. Because in their talking, in their words, God can use their own words to open their heart and to let him get in and speak. So it's not important for us to talk, it's important for us to be there. Some suggestions. One is what I call the 10-minute rule. How many have been in the hospital, you've been sick, and someone with very good intentions, a good heart, comes to visit you, and what do you feel obligated to do? You feel obligated to talk to them, to entertain them, when really what you need to do is rest. Remember why those people are in the hospital. They're there to get better. And you can do in 5 to 10 minutes much more than you can do in 30 minutes, because you can just let them know you love them, you care for them, you're praying for them. Is there anything I can do? And then get out so they can rest. Second thing is to sit quietly with those people, to give the family, the spouse who's been sitting by the bed for 12 hours, give them the chance to go get a cup of coffee, or go for a walk, or go for lunch, or go home and get a shower, and just sit and read. You don't have to talk to the patient, let them know you're there just to be there. If they need anything, let you know, but don't make them feel obligated to talk. Very important thing to learn. I love to tell stories. I got hundreds of them, so I'm going to tell one that just sticks out in my mind. If you want more, just look me up, I'll tell you more. I always loved it when the physicians would stop me in the hall and say, hey, the guy in room 210 is going to die soon, why don't you go talk to him and do your thing? Kind of gave me an open ticket to be there. This one day, this physician said that to me, and it happened that the patient was his grandfather. the physician's the only believer in the family, and he had shared the gospel with his grandfather off and on for years, and always been rejected. Grandfather's always said, "I'm too nasty, God doesn't want me in heaven." So now he was getting close to death, and so I went and sat on the bed, held his hand, and I knew he was hard of hearing because of contact with him earlier in the week a few times. And so I got down close to him and was talking in his ear and telling him that, Gary is very concerned. There's nothing else he can do medically for you, and you're going to die. And he's very concerned that you go to heaven and be with God. And share with him God's love, God's gift, the mercy and grace that's available to him. All he has to do is believe. And shared with him the thief on the cross, who in his last words, last breaths, acknowledged who Christ was and what he was doing. And Jesus said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." As I was talking, Ray squeezed my hand a little harder and was nodding. And I said, "Is that something that you would like to do? Is that a faith that you have?" And he nodded yes. And I said, "Can I pray with you?" And he nodded yes. So I was praying with him. It was very eloquent prayer, giving him into God's hands and asking God to work out his perfect plan in his life. And the old codger had the audacity right in the middle of my eloquent prayer to die. Now, I know some of you have nodded off in the middle of Rustin's messages. And the person next to you might think you're dead, but you always get up and walk out. Well, this guy didn't. He was dead. But then I had the privilege of being able to call Gary and say, "Your grandpa sent me." And the privilege of being able to preach a funeral sermon, and what material that is, be able to tell this unbelieving family that Ray is now in heaven, and this is why, and you can be listening. God is good. God sometimes chooses to use us at the end of his plan, sometime in the middle, sometime at the beginning. We never know where. But we just have to be available and be willing to give of our time and be there. And God is good.
Randy, a lot of people might think, well, you're a professional. That's what you do, but I'm not a professional, so what do I do? So what would you say to somebody that says, "Hey, this stirs my heart. I want to show compassion, and I really want to care for people that are hurting and maybe ill like that." What are some things that you would suggest that for those folks to do?
First of all, I used to be, I guess, a professional, but LaGrange County is full of the least of these, full of hurting people. Whether it be people who are ill and dying, whether it be families who are in crisis, whether it be self-imposed because of choice to use meth or heroin. They're all over the place. And if we're willing to give of our time, God will use us. And there's great chapels involved, and I'm proud to be here because the church is involved in so many outreaches that meet those needs, whether it be Elijah Haven or Agape House or the Farm Place or Council on Aging or any of these places. They're all looking for volunteers. And if we're willing to give of our time, God will use us. And I know we're busy. I know we don't have time. But if we're willing to sacrifice our time and look for opportunities, to allow God to lead us to opportunities, so we're there.
Amen. I'm sure that things haven't always ended well. Maybe, like that guy gave his heart to the Lord. Or, they call you and say, give me a picture for my wallet kind of thing. But there might be those moments where things maybe don't go the way it's planned. How do you deal with that?
The percentage of outcomes like that are few and far between, especially when you're dealing with addictions and the meth addicts and all of those alcoholics. The success rate is very small, but you have to hang on to the positive ones, and you have to trust God that He's working. And we don't know what's happening down the road. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know what God is doing in somebody's heart. and we don't know where we are in that timeline. Just trust Him and allow Him to work out His plan, and don't feel that it's our job to fix everybody. We can't. God can. But and He will do what He will do what He will do if we allow Him to do that, if we are willing to play our part.
You've had a personal experience being in the hospital and having the church come around you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's a team. I couldn't have done what I did at the hospital if it wasn't for other believers around those people, prayer warriors, mothers who pray for children just endlessly, people from the church that show their love, bring meals and sit with them, as I said, and things like that. It is a team. God uses all these pieces of the puzzle to come and bring out His outcome, and you are a big part of that. And pray for the people that are the professionals, pray for the patients, pray for the drug addicts, pray for the abused children, whatever God lays in your heart, be involved. And again, lots and lots of places where volunteers are needed. Places are screaming for volunteers to be able to fill in the gap.
After talking to Randy, losing his eyesight, I mean, that was such a huge part of your life. It's been hard for you to not be able to show that compassion. I know you want to be there and do all that. So, and Randy, thank you for sharing. Appreciate it, brother. Anyways, can we thank him? See, what Jesus is trying to do here is, I mean, He's showing the heartbeat of God, where the mercy and the grace of God meet people at their darkest, deepest struggle of whatever it may be that you're dealing with, or whatever that person may be dealing with. And that you and I, as followers of Jesus, we get to be the ones that give that gift of hope and encourage people to rest in Him. And I love what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 25. I mean, that's why we do what we do in Matthew 25. It says this: there's a story about accountability that in the end, Jesus tells a story. And He says, listen, let me just kind of explain how this is going to go. That there's accountability for the things that you do. And it's not those things that save you, it's the things that you do as a result of knowing Jesus. And He said, listen, when I was hungry, verse 37, He says, Lord God, he said, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me, and I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Verse 37, then the righteous will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go visit you? And the king will reply, I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. See, Jesus wants to use us to take the house of mercy and the house of grace and give it as a gift to people that are hurting. 3 thoughts I want you to leave with here this morning from this story in John 5 is that we need to show compassion, especially when it's not convenient. I mean, they were wrestling with the Sabbath, but we can't do that. We can't do that. And it's even when it's not convenient, because I know Randy said earlier, he said, listen, we don't have time. We're busy. We're running from here and there. But He wants His people to show compassion to the ill, even when it's not convenient. Even with the story, we need to show compassion, even when it's their own fault. I mean, you think about that. People may be in this situation because of a choice that they made. But listen, it doesn't matter whether they made the choice or this is what's going on. It doesn't matter what's going on. You show compassion. He said, I want you to show compassion. Don't play favorites. You just go in and you show compassion. The last thing is this. We need to show compassion because they may have lost hope. They've lost hope. They may have lost hope. And you get to be able to give them the gift of hope, that they can rest in Jesus once again. Would you stand for closing prayer? So my hope is this, that maybe God will birth some ministry out of this, that we will look to the ill, those that are hurting, those that are struggling, and say, God, how can you use us to be vessels of mercy and grace? close with you. Maybe it's some of you need to get with counsel and aging and say, I want to help drive. I'll give up some time to go drive some people to their appointments. Maybe it's go with a friend that's got an appointment that maybe might be kind of tough. Say, hey, can I go with you? Maybe for some of you, hospitals are not your thing. But maybe for some of you, it is. Maybe you need to stop by and just wander the halls. And just knock on the door and say, can I pray with you? You never know. Let's pray. God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for reminding us to be compassionate. Your word is so powerful. It's not meant to just stay on the pages. It's meant to get into our heart and infect our lives. So much so that it makes us change. That your Holy Spirit takes it and says, okay, Rustin, okay, what are you going to do about this? And God, I pray that you would help me, help us to show that compassion. That we would go to where they are, and a lot of them are at the hospital, and that pool of Bethesda is kind of like modern day hospital. And God, maybe we need to go and rub shoulders and sit down and listen to the story and offer them where they can find mercy and grace and find hope. God, we love you. Maybe there's some folks in this room that have been struggling, or they're just dealing with a lot. Maybe they're struggling. They haven't found their rest in you. Maybe today's the day where they just say, Jesus, save me. You say to come, and I'm coming. Save me. And you will. For the rest of us, God, that have responded to this gift of grace and mercy, we pray, God, that you would help us to be dispensers of it. That we would find those around us and to give them this gift of hope that is found in Jesus. God, we love you. We pray that you use us. Make a difference in this community through this church family. We love you. We give you glory and honor and praise. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless. Have a great day.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us and watching this video of our sermon this past Sunday. We hope it's been an encouragement to you. We believe in the ministry of what's happening at Brighton Chapel, and we believe it's going to make a difference in your life. And so we hope that you'll come back and be a part of it. We hope you'll visit us in person, be a part of what's happening here at Brighton Chapel. We hope you have a great day.